arm.
Well, we can count it. You know,
I'll just hold it like this, as if it's handheld.
You're the DJ. You're the DJ, and John is the MC.
Wiki.
Hi, everybody. You caught us while we were discussing some old school hip hop. Apparently,
don't you like to be in the pre-show chat? Yeah, don't you?
So actually, I had a thought because before we got started, Lauren was talking about his recent attendance of a Cleveland Orchestra concert, and it reminded me of I've been watching almost nothing but the Winter Olympics for the last 2.5 weeks. And of course, one of my favorite events, one of everybody's favorite events, who anybody who gives a shit about the Winter Olympics, is the figure skating. And they always, they figure skate the music. And as someone who has watched the Olympics for my entire life, I find it really interesting how the use of music has evolved just in my own lifetime, because I'm just barely old enough to remember when they were still mostly skating to classical music. And now it's like, if you watch this year's Olympics, it's very much sort of half and half, where there are some skaters that, and even some skaters would divide it, because they do two programs. They do a short program and a free program. And some of them, like there was one, she was one of the lady skaters from, I forget what country she was from. That's because I'm an American and I don't remember these things. But I think she was from Romania, and she did her short program to AC/DC.
Oh, brother.
And it was awesome. I mean, I thought it was great. Nice. And then her free skate was to like the Blue Danube. It was really like a shocking sort of contrast. And I thought of our talk last month, because somebody skated to Mars from Holtz's The Planets, which was mentioned last month in our conversation. So it's really interesting how, there's skaters who they dance to the classic. There was a bunch of people skating to Carmen, and then there were also like 3 or 4 people who were skating to various covers of Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah, which was kind of like, why did everybody pick this song this year? So it's interesting how like the use of, the people were like, somebody was doing Beyonce, and then the next person would do, like Bizet or something. It was really cool.
Cosmic convergence.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I've never heard of cosmic convergence. What sort of that new wave hip hop? What?
It's just cosmic.
You're not cool enough to have heard about it yet.
Lauren may be the only other person here old enough to remember this, but like way back in the day, in like if you went to a store, particularly a department store, they played the most bland, Muzak kind of stuff.
Exactly.
If you ever seen the Blues Brothers and they're in the elevator and there's this really hokey version of Girl from Ipanema, and that was common. That's what you got in we called it elevator music because all the elevators played it, and they played it in the department stores. And then over time, the music got more and more contemporary, and first they started playing real music, which was a pleasant change, to now where you go in stores and they're blasting hip hop, and it's like, wow, that's just in my lifetime. Or I remember like during a transition period, like in my high school, we had 2 drill teams. We had the white drill team and we had the black drill team. And the white drill team did all the stuff from the 50s you would expect, twirling guns and stuff. White guys with guns, imagine that. And then the black drill team did a totally different, like hip hop was just kind of new at the time, but they did their own thing, and like most of the audience was not prepared for it, but it was still pretty cool in retrospect.
I remember when I was in high school, they would let students handle the morning announcements from time to time. And I remember there were 2 students, classmates of mine, who got in trouble because, before the announcements would start in the morning, sometimes they would play music over the loudspeakers, and they got in just so much trouble because they played the Tom Petty song, "You Don't Know How It Feels." And there's a lyric in there that says, let's get to the point. Let's roll another joint. And oh boy, people were none of the students gave a shit, but some of the teachers were like, "Oh, I can't believe it's a drug reference. Oh my God,
this is a drug-free zone."
Yes, exactly. A drug-free school zone that includes songs.
Don't bogart that joint, my friend.
Well, in that same vein, for my prom, I didn't go to the prom, but the prom song that my class voted for was Wasp, "Fuck Like a Beast."
Lovely. Super duper.
They as you might expect, they overrode that song.
They did.
New Jersey, man, 1986.
That's beautiful. Oh,
when I worked in a grocery store, at one point, all the employees put together a petition to change the radio.
No more.
And somebody was like, "Hey, I'm putting together this petition." I'm like, "Sign, please." Like,
yeah.
Because I remember the one year at Christmas, like 30 minutes into them starting the Christmas music, I'm like, "Oh, please, I can't get through this month."
Yeah.
It was like,
Oh, yeah.
It was the worst covers you could ever imagine.
Yeah. Where
Like they were half yodeling everything.
Yodeling?
Well, it sounded like that. Like, you know how sometimes Christmas songs get so overdone, people feel like they need to present them in a different way.
Yeah.
Rather than like trying to do something creative.
You mean like what Fergie did with the national anthem?
They Fergied the shit out of it.
Hey, she was trying something. It didn't quite work, but good for her for trying something.
Didn't quite work.
It didn't work at all. It didn't work at all. It was not. It was even worse than when Roseanne tried to sing it bad.
Well, keep in mind, we can blame this all on Whitney Houston because she's the first one who decided she was going to put her own spin on the national anthem, and that's 20 years ago, is it not?
Almost 25.
More, yeah. It was first Gulf War. Yeah, and unfortunately, not everybody has the voice of Whitney Houston to go out there and belt that song out. That's a hard song to sing anyway. And to go out there and actually make it sound good, like that takes some talent, or at least some vocal
whole trick of singing the national anthem is knowing what note to start on and knowing what your range is.
Start low. Start low, so when you get to those high notes, you're not screeching.
And the best version, of course.
Yeah, of course. Then I'm instantly reminded of who here remembers the name Mike Royko? Joe, I expect you do.
It's familiar.
I know Mike Royko. Yeah,
he was a columnist for the Chicago Tribune, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
And he came up with his own version, which basically started out, "Oh, say can you see by the pawn shop's dim light what a swell 38 with its pearl handle gleaming in the gun catalog is a telescope sight. I'll snatch it up quick while the sirens are screaming." And you can guess where it goes from there.
So it's more true to life.
Yeah.
For the modern American state.
And it finishes, "Hey, don't you try to take
modern
my guns away from me. For the right to shoot at you is what I mean by liberty."
One thing that reminds me of George Carlin about how we had the only national anthem with rockets and bombs in it. However, if you ever listen to the French, if you usually look at the lyrics of the French national anthem, they are watering their fields with the blood of their enemies.
If I recall correctly, La Marseillaise is pretty violent, is it not?
It's Rise up, children of the motherland. We are going to kill the fuck out of those foreigners.
Yeah, that's in the third verse.
It's not about the foreigners, it's about the aristocrats, and
Exactly.
we got out of our system. We did that. Been there, done that.
And that's the national anthem to remind future generations this is what the fuck can happen.
Yeah, and we still have guillotine, so be careful.
Oh my, yeah. It is interesting though how violent. I mean, our national anthem is pretty violent, and then like our neighbors to the north have the loveliest patriotic national anthem, where it's just like, oh, we love our country so much.
Yeah, but Canadians aren't like the rest of the world. They're nice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
As I recall,
which is why Kevin Smith thought that to have Alanis Morissette play God in Dogma, because who else could put up with as much shit than a Canadian?
Find a nice Canadian lady; she'll be good.
Mexicans.
Okay, yeah,
they have to put up with all the same shit, and it's hot, and they're poor.
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
point.
really, that is a good point. Yeah. But yeah, so the Olympics are almost over with, and I've been watching almost nothing but I've been ping-ponging between the Olympics, and when I get sick of the Olympics, I watch an episode of an old game show on Amazon TV. Then I go back to
exciting.
That's my with that when I'm not working on YouTube shit, you know.
Of course.
You don't work.
Or raging, or yeah, I don't have a real job. Or just getting enraged about gun violence or the Lawrence Krauss thing or any other thing. I try to focus on.
I like enraged Steve.
Do you?
Yeah.
He's fun while I'm in the moment. When I'm like super angry and I'm just venting, it feels really good,
I love to watch your videos when you bitch about things. It's extremely cathartic.
It's like Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull when he's punching the walls of his prison cell, and then but eventually he gets to the end and he just starts crying. Like that's kind of what it's like. Where it's just like it feels good for a little bit, and then it's like, why are things like this?
Yeah. Friday night, man. I don't know if you saw. I posted on Facebook. I was just done with everybody. I just like, I can't take any more of this shit. But the cat that's on the strip there makes me think of Black Panther, and that was good.
I saw it last night.
I didn't see it. I can't go to the movies, so shut up.
Yes,
I haven't seen it yet myself. So
the sex scene between T'Challa and Killmonger. Oh my god!
Yes. So amazing.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Star Wars because of that.
Well, Black Panther is better than Star Wars.
Much.
I agree. Yeah. And I really like the new Star Wars.
I believe you. I believe you. I really want to see it, so I hope it will become available to download before Star Wars, because Star Wars isn't available to watch. So
I was really chuffed last night because I've been saying in the last week or so on Facebook that the Black Panther movie was unapologetically African, and so last night Rational Warrior, Reaper Nations, his other channel, he used that line, and I was like, yes. But JT Smith, Jules, he corrected me. He amended what I said. He said it was joyfully African, and I was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously,
should it be apologetically.
It's because it's America, and
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
sorry.
No, hey, we forget sometimes too. I mean, white people forget. White people forget sometimes.
It's easy to forget how much we hate black people here.
Yeah, sometimes it just slips my mind.
And sadly, even out of, and I've said this many times, even out of people that are generally not racist, white progressive people sometimes will say stuff that just makes me cringe. And I'm just like, oh, guys, it's this blind spot that you just don't get.
Yeah. And then there's people like Laura Ingram, who has the unmitigated balls to say, shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Hello?
Fuck are you? You host a show on Fox News. Who are you to tell anybody else?
I'm willing to bet she wasn't even a cheerleader.
Oh.
Well, and especially now, it kind of brings into mind the Republican convention in 2016 when she tried to putting her arm up like this.
That was memed on the.
It was just the camera angle. Come on.
And if your says be is the master race.
Yes.
Trumpers, Uber.
That's the new national anthem. You just wait. They're going to sneak that through. They're going to add that.
You Asians are weird.
And proud of it.
I'm proud of it. I'm wearing a TARDIS on my head.
The latest weird thing I was acquainted with was the gender reveal cakes.
Oh yeah, those are weird.
What the fuck are those?
What was that?
Gender reveal cakes.
Reveal.
Yeah. Reveal.
There was one with tractor or tiaras.
What is a gender reveal?
A baby shower where you reveal the gender of your baby.
In the US?
That's a bit much.
It's just. I mean, obviously everybody to each their own. Everybody can do whatever they want. But I mean, like when my wife and I were getting married, we did everything we could to talk people out of throwing us any kind of fucking party, let alone coming up with like excuses to have parties. Like, oh, let's have a gender reveal party.
For your wedding?
No,
we revealed our genders
gender reveal in itself, but none of the cakes I saw were saying a boy or girl, it was all super weird, super stereotypical bullshit.
Yeah.
Like pistols or pearls for babies.
Yeah.
Will it be a cupcake or a stud muffin? A stud for a baby? What the fuck? That's creepy.
Well, the best I saw was somebody just posted a long list of things like scorpions or wasps.
Well, it's just like those beauty pageants for like 6-year-olds.
So
that's the creepiest shit I've ever seen.
Where good can that go? Like who thinks of this? It's nowhere.
You'll be a whore, but you'll be a high class whore, sweetie.
Well, here's the thing I think it's kind of messed up about that. Particularly messed up about it. The same people who go to things for 6-year-olds sexualizing their child at 6 are the ones that are afraid of trans people in the bathroom. They might touch my child. You should worry about the people that you're parading your young child dressed up in sexy outfits.
Yeah.
No self-aware whatsoever.
They don't want trans people near their kids, but they will call a baby boy a stud. What?
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's creepy.
Have you seen Little Miss Sunshine? They
that
pretty damn well.
Yeah, Little Miss Sunshine is great. Yeah,
never saw it.
Yeah, it's really good, and it definitely pokes fun at that whole thing, the creepy child beauty pageant thing.
Good. And remember,
when my daughter was born, I was thinking of getting her a tramp stamp right away, so that way she didn't have to wait.
Get it out of the way early,
Toddlers with tattoos. Bam. Oh, my new business.
There you go.
How many kids do you know, especially the young girls who have their ears pierced before they're 1 year old?
Yeah, that's a stupid.
Me. That was done to me.
Yeah, but you're French.
Wow.
I mean,
come hey now you leave your xenophobia back at your
in France, it's like a custom. Every little girls have their ear pierced very young.
Yeah, just like little boys get a little something nipped off the.
Not here though.
Yeah,
not here though.
Yeah, not there. No, but. I mean,
I know it's
here in the
US. Yeah, I don't get why, but
actually, I have a different opinion. Actually, I don't mind the fact that I've been circumcised because I don't have to deal with the fact of my foreskin getting teared, getting narrowed.
No, the issue is nobody asked you before.
True. Yeah.
That's the issue.
I'll concede that I didn't agree to it. It was just onto me, but my parents I think consented to that happening to me. So I still say for the net medical benefits, I don't mind the fact that I've been circumcised at my age.
Except that the net medical benefits are negligible in 99% of cases.
99.99.
Yeah, I still see the net benefit in my opinion.
I'm almost
0.01%. So
I'm almost 50. None of those things has ever happened to me.
But I still hear enough cases from Loveline guys get their
plural of anecdote is not data.
No, come on.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's maybe 4 years ago, we had an enormous argument about this on Atheist Nexus. There was a guy, I think, who was a secular Jew who was suggesting that there was an issue with this, and basically he got he was fallen on by every one of us, almost every one of us, me included. And my attitude is simple. It's
don't mutilate babies.
Bada bing, that's the word, mutilation.
There you go.
I don't see it as bad when it's done properly, though.
The removal of healthy tissue under medical auspices without justification is mutilation. Period. End of discussion.
I think there is medical justification, but that's a difference in opinion that we can disagree on.
Yeah,
it can be medical justification, but
that's very rare.
Right, that's the whole thing. Is it's statistically speaking,
if you clean yourself properly, there's no reason that there is a problem.
Yeah, and yet this guy was insisting
for a reason. If men prefer having their parts like that, I have no issue about it whatsoever. I don't care. But my issue is don't do stuff to babies. They didn't ask for it.
Exactly.
I will agree to that. I definitely will agree to that.
It's the same issue with the mutilation of intersex babies.
That I will agree to as 100%.
They wouldn't have been perfectly happy with non weird genitals.
And this,
who cares?
This doesn't even get into the cases of near penectomies and the several occurrences of herpes happening when you've got these Orthodox Jews, literally sucking the foreskin off.
I have a problem.
I heard that one. I just about hit the ceiling.
And that it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that you hear about like a case. Like it seems like every so often it happens often enough that you would think they would say, you know what, maybe we should just not do this anymore.
And this is the thing that I think is important, and Megan, Steve, right? Lady Tiger Lily.
Oh yeah.
So she's made the point, like a lot of times, people say, okay, there's this tiny chance that you might get a disease where removing the foreskin is warranted, but no one ever looks at what's the danger of actually doing it. And it's kind of like when she got medically sterilized because she didn't want to have kids, and everyone was like, oh, all these things can happen, and she's like, motherfucker, do you know what you can happen when you're pregnant? No one was looking at all the horrible things that can happen to you while you're pregnant, and
like getting pregnant or having a kid.
It's like the chances of something going wrong from sterilization were like less than the chances of something going wrong from being pregnant. So
I wanted to get sterilized, and I could have because of my age at the time, but there was too many walls. Too many walls. It was so fucking complicated.
Well,
I do
I don't have the spoon for that shit.
Once again, state controlling women's bodies.
Yeah. Go for it.
Because what if you regret it? What if you regret it? It's my problem, for fuck's sake. I was 32, I think, when I asked my doctor about it. You're going to regret it. No.
I wasn't asking for your permission.
95% of all people regret having children. True fact.
And what percentage of facts are pulled out of somebody's ass at the time they're mentioned?
This is the same problem that like trans people get for like I've heard from trans people. In the surgery, they're like, "Are you sure you want to do this? How soon do you want to do this?" And they'll say, "Yesterday." Yesterday.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
And they still make them wait 3 months.
And a lot of this comes from the simple fact that these people cannot empathize enough to understand where the individual is coming from. They are not this person. They do not identify with their genitalia the way we might identify with our genitalia.
And just think about, I mean, I know the way I feel, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. I don't like going to the doctor when I'm sick. Like it takes a lot to get me to go to the doctor because I hate going to the doctor. I hate sitting there. I hate being examined. I hate telling people about my problems. Imagine if you are a person who wants to begin the transition process and you want to get on hormones or you want to start going down the road to having surgery or whatever. I mean, most people, by the time you start down that path, you're already pretty sure that's what you want to do, because that's 1,000 times more humiliating and invasive and difficult than just going to the doctor for some ailment. It's
And Steve, I'll tell you what, I had a very dear friend of mine. This is easily 30, almost 40 years ago, whose husband had ended up was diagnosed with gender dysphoria, literally went the entire distance, and including gender reassignment surgery. And my friend reported to me that this was a person who, as a male, did not really especially take care of himself, was just clearly not happy. As a female, boom, just complete change, just literally midnight and high noon.
But even if it was the inverse, I mean, it's their decision to make. They're not children, they're adults.
And people can't
Shit.
themselves
The
to
same
respect.
people will tell you that it's mercy to let disabled people commit suicide. Shut up. Let people do what they want with their bodies.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You know, I never ended up making the video, but I wanted to a while back, and I wanted to say, look, you know, the people that were being trans deniers, like, look, you don't have to understand all the particulars.
Right.
Yeah, nobody wants you to understand.
Even though I accept transgenderism, I don't understand everything about it, but it doesn't matter. It's not my body. So strictly on body autonomy, it's like, look, if whatever that person wants to do, wherever they want to live, it's not affecting you. Respect it. You don't even have to agree with it. Just
what if they pee near me?
Yeah, Joe, your problem is very simple. You don't poke your nose into other people's business without their permission.
Exactly.
I mean, there are people out there who make it their lives to do that.
Well, and I tried to explain people, like even religious people, when they get into like, you know, like, well, why, you know, you guys want to make it bad to talk about religion? And I'm like, look, okay, I grew up religious here in New Jersey. However, because I grew up in a very religiously diverse community, we had a large Jewish population, and we had a lot of Catholics, a lot of non-Catholics, various denominations. So in this area, New York, New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Connecticut, it's so diverse religiously that people didn't talk about, even Christians among Christians wouldn't talk about it, because I'm probably a different denomination than you. So it was seen as respect to one another. I'm not going to talk to you about my shit because I don't want to hear about your shit. You know, I want you to keep yours to self. So it's mutual respect. And it wasn't about being atheist versus non-religious. It was like, look, we all have our beliefs. We're fine. If we choose to have a conversation about it, it's one thing, but we weren't going to constantly throw it in each other's faces.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is, you know, mutual respect, and how much of it is, I don't want to hear too much about the other side because it might stir up what's going on with me.
Well, and that's a big part of it too. But then as the thing, it came down to, it was like, you know, again, it was a community largely Christians, and it was like, well, I'm a Catholic and you're not, so you know, we're not gonna start that fight again. You know?
Yeah, that was actually a surprise for me. That was actually a surprise for me growing up. It's like, wait a minute, you don't drink wine at church? I hate the wine at church. Oh my god, can I go to your church?
That's an option.
Well, who likes Mogan David to begin with?
Well, you know, it's like that old story about how you can tell the difference between Catholics and Protestants. Catholics talk to each other when they catch each other at the liquor store.
Well, one thing I will say, as far as church wine, the church wine is horrible. However, growing up with my grandmother being half Jewish, you know, I did get a fondness for Manischewitz.
Speaking of disrespect, is that a landline in the background, Joe? Come on.
Oh, absolutely.
Another way,
you know why? When Hurricane Sandy happened, I had no cell service, but my landline worked.
Yeah, so
there's
take
that.
that,
Yeah.
John.
So people were able to talk to you during a disaster? Ugh, the worst.
You had to take phone calls on top of everything else?
Didn't have to, got to.
Taking phone calls wasn't the worst part of it. Taking spam phone calls, robocalls.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was hard, because once because my company, we have service contracts with certain customers, so of course everyone's having problems. So I had to be able to get phone calls because people needed help still. You know, so that was fun, especially with no power.
Look at you caring about helping people.
Yeah, you know, so
never mind the fact there was probably
signaling cuck.
Stop trying to make us all feel bad by talking about what a great person you are.
Yeah. When you said cuck, this reminded me of something I thought was kind of funny. It's like Schrodinger's, you know, SJW male thing. Basically, on the one hand, you know, the alt-right guys, they'll say that, oh, well, you're only being feminist or pro-feminist, whatever term you want to use, because you want to get women. And on the other hand, they call us cucks. Like, you know, either we're trying to get sex or we don't want to have sex, or can't get it. Which is it, guys?
What's the deal? Yeah.
No, we just want to see we just want to see other men do our partners.
Yeah, and of course the cuckold community are pissed because they're like, hey, you're making fun of the thing we actually like.
Yeah, they're like, at least we're getting some.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Fucking dude. Like,
Yeah, I often wonder about if the whole concept of playing hard to get was essentially what we did to justify sexual harassment.
Probably.
Yeah. Oh, there's probably a bunch of stuff that we did that to justify sexual harassment.
Oh yeah, it's like
we're gonna have to work our way out of.
Yeah, I look back at myself 15 years ago and like just going, "What the hell, dude?"
It was in the media, so no one could blame you. I mean, it's like, oh man, she's saying no because she really wants it and something like that, and that's the media we had. My God,
I look back and I'm relieved that I wasn't worse than I was. I mean, I was above average as far as like I was not like as much of a pig and a chauvinist and a jerk as a lot of other people were, but I was still like I look back at shit that I said or thought or whatever when I was in my early 20s and think, God damn, what a fucking prick, you know.
I was in a fraternity. I've got you beat.
And that's my only thing.
Well, I mean, fraternities. I mean, that's breeding ground right there.
Yeah.
Not in.
I don't know. There aren't fraternities in France, and there's a lot of men.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that's my whole thing. You know, Steve, you had posted the thing a couple days ago about people that are going, oh, the Me Too thing is going too far and all that kind of stuff. And my only thing is, and I saw one woman write about this, and she's part of Me Too, is that if there's I don't think that Me Too is going too far. My only thing is that it's important to differentiate the severity of the offense, and for the main reason why, like you said, we're all talking, all of us guys here, we're all looking back at our past and going, oh gee, I shouldn't have done that, or shouldn't have said that, or shouldn't have thought that. So if you push it to an extreme, you can basically, we're all guilty to some degree. So I would say is what's important is recognizing the difference of severity, and also was it a pattern of behavior? Was it a one-off behavior? Did the behavior improve? Because I think what we want is people to change. So we have to make room for people to change and not get into, the holier than thou thing of saying, hey, okay, you look at somebody like Kevin Spacey or Harvey Weinstein are like really extreme, like,
like Donald Trump.
Decades of bad behavior that continued up until extremely recently, and they only stopped it because they got caught. It got called out on it.
And incidental or culturally caused behaviors, and single out the predators.
Exactly. We need to distinguish between the two, for sure.
And I think, I do think, I think,
I cannot disagree with that, but
I think time will tell with that. You know what I mean? I feel like the Me Too movement, in terms of everybody paying attention and really caring about this at a cultural level, is still so new that maybe when everybody is called out, it feels like everybody's being treated equally regardless of their offense. But I think, as time goes on, it'll be like, I honestly don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I honestly don't believe that someone like, for instance, Aziz Ansari is going to lose his career over that article written about him, even though I agree that what he is depicted doing in that article is unacceptable. It's not like as bad as what Harvey Weinstein did or Kevin Spacey did, but it's unacceptable. Lawrence Krauss.
It's not as bad. It is for the woman who was on the other end of it, though.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
That's why I kind of disagree with what Joe was saying, unless I have misunderstood you. But the little offense are only little when they are not the ones who are directed at us.
The thing is,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, for instance, okay, if you committed one murder versus you were a serial murder, one will get like 15 10 to life, and the other one will maybe get the death penalty or life without parole. So in other words, the punishment, so in no sense are we saying either one is not bad.
Okay,
we're not minimizing it. What we're saying is that the punishment or the reaction that we do, how we treat that person once they're found out, it makes a difference. The severity and the frequency of the crime, and also what they did. Again, like, okay, you mentioned, Steve mentioned Aziz Ansari. I'll mention Louis C.K. So, Louis C.K. He didn't commit he committed assault, not a battery. He apparently tried to make amends after it happened. And he took responsibility when the people came forward. So again, now Louis got to go away for a while. I don't think he's going to be gone forever.
Right. But But yeah, I do think he should go away for a while, and
Yes.
I don't like, and I'm very, personally, like as a fan of his, I was really disillusioned and
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was a fan of his too.
Yeah,
so.
and I was also disillusioned with myself because before that New York Times article, I had heard those allegations already. And
I had never.
Yeah, I mean, they were out there, you know what I mean? Like they weren't the subject of like a big headline story, but they were out there. There were rumors of people, just like the Bill Cosby thing, like people sort of whispered about it for a long time. And so I knew about it, and I was one of the people, and obviously I don't know him, I'm not friends with him or whatever, but I just admire his work. And I was one of those people who just sort of pushed it aside and was like, well, and I feel kind of bad about that.
Well, here's the thing though, Steve. Here's one difference between I think Cosby and Louis C.K. Beyond the frequency and the depth of what they did, but also until it took a while for actual victims to come forward. So what we had was we were hearing people like second and third and fourth hand, and so it's a somewhat different situation because it's like, because basically everyone who was saying something openly, none of them were the victims. Like, somebody who heard something from somebody else, so they're already hearing it second or third hand. And so it's kind of like, well, okay. So what I did was I kind of took a step back and I said, okay, this might be true. I didn't want to dismiss it, but I'd like to hear from someone who actually happened to, and then that did happen. And
I forget who. I think it might have been a blog article that PZ Myers wrote about something like this, and it wasn't about someone in the atheist community, but it was about it was like a celebrity, and he had been told or heard something about them being abusive with somebody or sexually harassing somebody, and he shared it on his blog, but he said, this sounds credible to me, like this sounds like this is probably true, but the people I'm hearing it from are not the people that it actually happened to. The people I'm hearing it from are people who say that they talked to them or heard it second or third hand. So and he went and he said, I looked back at certain dates and certain times, and it matches up. It seems like, I believe that this probably happened, but I'm not going to, come out and say 100% for sure, because as far as I know, the people that it actually happened to, I haven't spoken to them or I haven't heard them say anything. So,
and that's appropriate. Well, that was the other thing too, like with Louis C.K., one of the first people to actually step forward and it didn't happen to them, was Tig Notaro. And unfortunately, because Tig Notaro had a falling out with Louis C.K. on other business matters, so it made, is she saying something that she actually heard, or is she just angry at him, or
sour grapes?
They don't need that kind of excuses though. So
I agree. I definitely I agree with what Joe is saying, but at the same time, and I'm not saying that you don't feel this way, Joe, because I think we're pretty much in sync on this. But my instinct and the constant voice in my head sort of pushing me is always telling me, side with the accusers, side with the victims, even if you don't mean to say something that undermines them or casts doubt on them, or it sounds like, let's slow down with this Me Too stuff. Like, I'm really careful about saying anything that could be taken that way. You know what I mean?
And that's one thing I would say is, like, some people who say, well, I'm being neutral, I'm just trying to be skeptical. But you hear their arguments; they're obviously arguing against the victim the entire time.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
right? It's like I've tried to remain skeptical on other issues, and when I'm as a position of skepticism, I don't say anything. I'm just like I'm waiting for things to come out.
Exactly.
Right.
Like when Bill Cosby things started to come out, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And then some of the information I found out, a few facts about him. I'm like, okay, yeah, he did it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the same thing. Like I said with me, when Tig Notaro came forward, what I did was I didn't dismiss it. I said, okay, I would like to, like I said, because she didn't talk to the people directly. People would happen. I said, well, it may be true. So I was prepared to believe it. So, but I took a like I said, I didn't speak about either way. I just kind of said, well, I'm prepared to hear it, to believe anything at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to throw out a little bit of a different datum on this, if I may. I mentioned the Cleveland Orchestra concert yesterday, and this is interesting from a couple of different angles, if I may say so. Originally, the guy who was supposed to be conducting this all Ravel concert was Charles Dutoit. He used to be the music director at Montreal Symphony. I've got a recording of him doing most of the Ravel that I've heard. He owns the music. Problem is, he's been Me Too'd.
Yeah.
And as a result, instead of having a French conductor who has a demonstrable grasp of it and is admittedly 80 years old, we got a guy probably less than half his age who's either German or Austrian. And while he had a handle on it, it weren't the same. It weren't. I mean, anybody who's listened to this stuff and knows, how French music is supposed to be played, you'd know immediately that there was something missing.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's sort of like a secondary effect of the whole business.
Well, I kind of think that's just something we're going to have to ride for a while, before this is all sort of shaken out. I mean, I've drawn an analogy before, and I'm not drawing any sort of analogy to the severity of the offenses, obviously, but like in the 90s when it turned out that all of our favorite baseball players were on steroids. It sucks that we have to now be super dubious of that entire era. But I would rather have us have to go through that because that's the truth than just ignore it and say, well, but if we just pretend it didn't happen, then we can have all our favorite players back. You know what I mean? Like they did something wrong and we need to accept that. And there are, I know, like I was talking on the Q&A live stream I did a couple days ago about, people who are in some of my favorite movies who I feel kind of weird about now, my favorite superhero movie, Superman Returns. Kevin Spacey plays Lex Luthor. That's going to be there. You know what I mean? Bryan Singer directed it. Bryan Singer has a lot of accusations and allegations against him that I have to struggle with. And, and I think that's just the situation. Can
you separate the art from the artist?
Yeah. And
should you?
And should I? Yeah, exactly. Should I? Is it worth it to me to say, well, but I really, really like this movie, so I'm going to just, ignore all of this stuff. But if I did that, what does that say about me? And, and
my favorite singer from when I was a teenager, it was Bertrand Cantat. I don't know if you heard of him. He killed his partner, Marie Trintignant, who was an actress. He punched her with 18 times in the face.
Ow.
Okay. So it's complicated, but I don't have to ask myself, should I separate the art with the artist? I can't listen to him anymore. I just can't. I can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I'm a domestic violence survivor. I can't.
Well, call me screwy or whatever you want to, but every so often, I mean, purely for the interaction, if for no other reason, I still have to go back to my old I Spy episodes because watching Bill Cosby and Bob Culp interact is just precious. Yeah. And the thing is, Culp himself said that interaction was real, and everything else aside, to me, that has value.
I think everybody has to make that choice for themselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think everybody has to, like, I know, and this is another thing I mentioned in my Ask Away live stream on Friday. Like, as a wrestling fan, I used to be able to watch Chris Benoit matches. And for people who don't know, Chris Benoit killed his wife and son and then killed himself. And it was a horrible, horrible thing, and it was a huge scandal. And for a while, the WWE just stopped featuring that. They didn't release his matches on video. If they were releasing a show that one of his matches was in, they would edit the match out. Like, they just tried to pretend he didn't exist because they didn't want there to be any. I
kind of like that approach. In France, we act like those men are the victims.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and for a few years after the Benoit thing happened, I was still okay to watch his matches. I was able to compartmentalize because, unfortunately, given what happened, I mean, he was one of the greatest wrestlers of his era. He was incredibly talented. So, as a fan of the sport, it was difficult to avoid him. But the longer I go, the more difficult it is to rationalize watching his matches and celebrating him, because it's more and more difficult for me to separate the art from the artist, you know. And I feel like these are fucking wrestling matches. Like, are these really worth overlooking what he did?
Right.
And I get to the point where I just can't do that, you know.
And it's also different for some people of like how much that artist means to them. Like, for example, Michael Jackson. To some people, he was their god because of when they grew up, it was his music from like the Jackson 5 era or the 80s era and stuff like that. And so when the allegations were coming out, he has never been convicted, but
there's an awful lot. Yeah.
Well, the thing for me, I think, you know, it depends on the severity of what the person did. But I think, you know, okay, like Mel Gibson, I'm not happy with the ton of things he's done. Braveheart is still a movie I love. I'll still watch it. Now, I wouldn't buy it because I don't want money in his pocket.
Right. That's a good
So I won't allow myself. I won't stop myself. I'm not going to punish myself by
that's a good compromise, I think.
But then I'm also not going to give him any remuneration. So he's not going to get any benefit from my enjoyment. It's kind of like, you know, because and this is what I get into a video that I've been contemplating for quite a while, and I think I am going to make. And it was originally, I was really going to make this around the time when we were talking, you know, a while back about the Confederate monuments. Yeah. Because I saw what sparked me there was some right-wing dude who was like, well, why don't we take, you know, the statues of Washington and Jefferson down because they own slaves? And I started thinking about it. Of course, he was trying to challenge us, like, well, see, liberals, you're not going to do that because you like these guys. But then I thought about it more. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Exactly.
Because here's the thing: we can recognize and give credit for the things they did that were positive without venerating them as people. So you know, you have to recognize you have to recognize the contribution of Thomas Jefferson to the world, but you can also say he was a shit because he had slaves and all this kind of stuff. So
and apparently raped one of them as well.
Right, exactly.
Sally Hemings.
At least,
exactly. And so we can separate their accomplishment from the bad things they've done. And I thought in general, like, you think about when you put up statues, and maybe the one good thing to come out of religion, you know, although no one ever follows it, you know, thou shalt not make any graven images. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of wisdom in that, you know, because the thing is, when you literally put somebody up on a pedestal like that, they become a cult figure. Yeah. And then you can't have an objective conversation about their good points and their bad points, and you get stuck into, but that's that person who's literally up on a pedestal, and it becomes like a cult. Yeah. So get rid of Columbus. I still think it's important. It was whether you want to call it a discovery or not, Columbus relocating.
Here's what you do, and I can put it simply. Tell the whole story.
I'll tell the whole story. Yeah. So you can say yes.
I just got this book in the mail, A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I'm going to look forward to it because I heard from like other like anarchist YouTubers and saying that was eye-opening for them. And that's another thing that you bring up, Joe. Chrissy Winters mentioned this in one of her hangouts like last week or something like that, where here in America, we tend to just like glorify our heroes, like putting them up on statues and stuff like that. And with her experience being in like Cologne in Germany and stuff like that, Europeans don't do that. They have a rich history. They don't, but they recognize it's a history, and all these people like King Henry and all those people, Napoleon and stuff like that, they're people. They recognize the bad as well as the good and stuff like that. So they can like recognize all of that, and I think we in America need to do that more. And we're
really bad at history.
I've been trying to argue recently that symbology will tend to lock in the way we think about people and events more than truth will, and symbology winds up getting us away from truth. And for instance, the national anthem we were talking about earlier, the third verse is horribly racist, especially given its context. And by saying, but it's tradition, you know, Weird Al addressed that in Weasel Stomping Day, you know, it's tradition that makes it okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, Let's see. Here's one thing we can do with the Star Spangled Banner, though, that the Germans did with Deutschland über alles. If you look at the current German national anthem, they basically dropped the first verse, and the rest of the song's the same. So they got rid of the Nazi part and kept the rest. So to me, I guess we've kind of done that because no one ever actually sings the second and third verse.
No, most people don't even know that those verses are even there.
Yeah,
that's right. So
unless you're talking about the sum of all fears,
right?
Yeah,
right.
You could technically publish, hey, here's the version, here's the modern version, and it doesn't include all that other stuff.
Yeah.
We basically created a new song based on the old song.
Yeah. My favorite versions of the national anthem are all instrumental anyway. That tune
Jimi
wasn't
Hendrix.
even an original.
Jimi
Hendrix.
The Russian Federation national anthem is the Soviet one altered as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you mentioned a minute ago, Joe, about like when people would say, "Oh, why don't you take down the other statues?" And it ended up being kind of an own goal because people were like, "Well, yeah, why the fuck don't we?" It reminded me of Marco Rubio at that town hall about gun control the other night on CNN, where he said, "But you don't realize that if we pass this proposed assault weapons ban, that would ban all semi-automatic weapons," and everybody applauded. They're like, "Yeah, let's fucking do it." Like, is that supposed to stop us?
Well, especially
all that does more than anything else is shows how married he is to the NRA.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the thing that I always laugh about that too, because then they'll say, "Well, but this handgun is semi-automatic," and like, well, here's the thing though. A handgun, the effective range is about 100 meters unless you're really good, and even there, beyond 2 or 3, it's worthless. Whereas, a long rifle, you're talking effective 300 to 500 meters, and if you're really good, half a mile to maybe a mile, depending on the caliber of the weapon you have. So you couldn't have done the Las Vegas shooting with a handgun.
Right.
Yeah. Not to mention the magazine size difference.
Yeah.
And on top of which, a revolver is a semi-automatic weapon. Like it or not, it has a very slow fire rate. A Glock 17 is also a semi-automatic weapon with a much higher fire rate. An AR-15 also semi-automatic weapon, but with rounds. All you need is one. Basically, you hit somebody with an AR-15 round, they're in deep shit.
Yeah.
It's like they keep just starting to say self-defense, but there's a lot of weapons out there that are not for self-defense.
I agree.
Like an AR-15 is a horrible self-defense weapon. Mm-hmm. High caliber handguns are not for just yourself.
Calling an AR-15 a self-defense weapon is like calling an ICBM a self-defense weapon. I'm sorry,
Well, that's the thing. It's so stupid because you don't. If you're in close quarters, in fact, here's the proof of it. The M4 carbine was purposely made is effectively the same weapon made smaller because having a rifle of that size, which has a long barrel for being accurate to long range, is ungainly and unwieldy in a close quarters environment.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not designed for that use.
Yeah, which makes it that much more effective for guerrilla warfare.
Yeah,
right. Really, all they want them for is to defend their culture and heritage.
But don't ask too many questions about what they mean by that. Right. Yeah, I mean, I tell you what though, I've learned not to get my hopes up, and after the Parkland shooting, I was really just done with the whole thing. But I have been pleasantly surprised by the moment that has occurred as a result of it, where I still am not getting all that attached to the idea that there will be real change, but it's nice to see that the conversation is still going on, that it didn't stop 2 days after the event, which is what usually happens, where everybody says, "Oh, this is awful, we should do something," and then 2 days later we're just all talking about something else. I love the fact that people are dropping the NRA. I love the fact that the corporations are taking away their discounts and the NRA are pitching a fit about it. I think that's great. I love the fact that what was her Emily Rodriguez, had got more Twitter followers in like a week than the NRA has. You know what I mean? Like they're little things, and they don't really mean anything in and of themselves, but they're signs of encouragement of maybe we're finally starting to listen.
Well, here's the thing. What I think is coming down to, Steve, is that is it basically people, you know, it's kind of ironic because it's the same reason why, you know, the people who support Trump is, you know, they are getting screwed over, just not by the people they think are screwing them over.
Yeah.
And so you can only push people so far. And what's happening is when you constantly keep telling them the same empty platitudes, like, oh, well, there's nothing you can do. And you're like, really? We can't stop people from gunning our children down on a regular basis.
Right. And words, thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers.
I mean, if you're not sick of that by now, you damned well should be. On top of that, I don't remember the kid's name, but that the young man who was accused of being an actor.
Oh yeah.
This week, this morning, if you can find it, pull it up, because that kid is on fucking fire. Yeah, he looks straight into the camera and he says, you know, Marco Rubio, are you doing this for effect or are you doing this because you believe it? You know, the kid was, I mean, he may have been coached to a certain degree, but I'm here to tell you, he lit it up.
Yeah,
well,
he absolutely lit it up.
Well, here's what I think is very, very different about this time too. See, and this is what makes it great and why it's getting traction, I think, because every time this happens, you know, the right wing is always like, well, we can't talk about it now out of, you know, respect for the victims. Well, it's the victims standing up and saying, no, fuck you. Yeah. We don't want to be victims anymore. We don't want other people to be victims.
Yeah. On top of that,
so stop using us as political bait to get everybody to shut up.
On top of that, people like this kid had grown up. They were born, some of them, before Columbine. They grew up with this shit as a constant thing, and you know what? They're sick of it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, well, it's too soon to talk about it. One of the best responses to that after this most recent shooting that I saw was someone said, okay, it's too soon after the Parkland shooting to talk about that. So it's been 5 years since Sandy Hook. Can we talk about that?
Exactly.
Like or the one after that, or the one after that, or the one after that. Like
but Sandy Hook was a false flag operation.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
And here's something
crisis actors.
Here's something that the gun people really have to better watch. They better be careful for themselves, because what's happening now is, you know, because they keep trying to throw the platitudes out there. If they don't, and again, most people still are not looking to ban all weapons. So some aren't looking necessarily to ban any specific weapon. I just want, you know, you just want to make sure there's a better way to determine who's allowed to have them. But the more they push, the more unreasonable they are. If they don't accept a reasonable solution, they will have an unreasonable solution forced on them at a later date.
Accept compromise now or accept revolution later. I mean,
push will eventually come to shove.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And it reminds me of, I don't know if anybody else has ever read, there was a letter that General Sherman wrote to a newspaper during the Civil War. And it was in like the final year of the Civil War when things had finally definitively turned in the North's favor, and Sherman was on his march across the South. And he wrote a letter to a newspaper because somebody was saying, well, you know, what about, you know, the tactics against the South are so ruthless now. And, you know, and Sherman said, you know, if we offered the South peace 2 years ago and they said no, and then we offered it to them a year ago and they still said no. And if they had taken our offers early, they may have been able to have a peace where they got to keep their country, but now they're going to lose everything. You know, like we tried to be reasonable and they didn't want to be reasonable. So now this is what is going to happen. Right. And we're going to end this war on our terms, not on their terms, not on compromised terms. This is how it's going to be because they left us no choice. And I think you're right. The NRA, the gun lobby in general might find themselves at that point where, you know, if common sense gun control is put on the table and they keep refusing it, then eventually they're just going to lose everything.
Eventually the camel's back gets broken.
Yeah.
To crib a line from my favorite Star Trek episode, peace or utter destruction. The choice is yours.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the most frustrating thing, though, is watching the Republicans pretend to support bills they repealed last year.
Yeah.
And then they're going to come back out with them and pretend like it was their idea all along.
Yeah. And Rubio's the worst of that lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's worthless. I think it was one of the kids. It was one of the Parkland survivors. They said they should rename the AR-15 the Marco Rubio because they're both far too easy to buy. I mean, I don't don't care if someone gave him that line or not. That's a great line.
That is a great line. That's amazing.
I'm sure that the kids have people around them who are sort of saying, you know, when you go on TV, say this. Like, I'm not naive enough to think that that's not happening. But that's a great line. And the fact that people who were students who were actually there are the ones leading this, I think is a really encouraging thing and really inspiring.
And it's not just that; it's that they're leading it and they're well informed and they know these guys' lines almost before they speak them.
Yeah. And it adds another element too, because the people that are opposing them have to be very careful because now if they attack, they're attacking victims of an attack.
Yeah,
and that's, which has already happened. And so, like, actually, I don't know if you heard, Steve, I think you reposted it about, because of it, InfoWars already has a strike on YouTube because for bullying, and he could lose his channel, which would be fucking sweet.
Wouldn't that be a shame? Yeah,
Trump would lose his second favorite news channel.
Yeah, exactly. What would he watch after Fox and Friends was over?
Here's one other element too, where the Republicans are between a rock and a hard place, because here's the problem. So now they made the lie and made some promises that we know they're probably not going to keep, but those promises have pissed off the gun people.
Yeah.
So if they keep their promise, they piss off the gun people. If they don't keep their promise, they're going to get eviscerated by the other side. Yeah. So they literally can't win. It's really a matter of minimizing the damage for them.
Yeah. And of which side do you fall on? Do you side?
They're going to follow the money.
Oh, of course they are. They're going to.
It's a capitalist society.
If the Republican, if their continued commitment to Trump has shown anything about the Republican Party, it's shown that they'll stick with their commitment even if everybody else in the world knows that they're on the wrong side and that they're completely without excuse. They're going to be like, yeah, but he's our guy. Yeah, but the NRA, they're our guys. We're going to stick with them. The first major Republican politician to make a real meaningful break with the NRA is going to be a big deal if that ever happens. Because
and I think it may
George whichever HW
one of them
broke with the NRA a bazillion years ago.
Well, that's true. He did. Yeah. Didn't he resign his membership? He resigned his
membership. Was making noise about that on This Week as well. He was with I believe it was the governor of Colorado, and they were talking about taking action and also about possible third party things going on as well. And and of course they're saying no, we're not running, bullshit.
I would love to see third party Republicans run, because that's going to split tickets and that could destroy the party overall. But the thing about it too is you said about they're going to follow the money. The problem that they're going to have though is money is important in elections, but money is very often overtaken by a populist uprising. Money can only go so far.
Exactly.
So they're in the danger of they may keep the money and lose their jobs.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Is one of the things that will cause Republicans to break with the NRA, or even perhaps to break with Trump, is when they start losing elections because of it. And hopefully we see the start of that this coming fall. Yeah. We realize, oh shit, we're going to lose because of this. The rats will be jumping off the sinking ship. But
well, the problem is it's a long distance from February to November.
Oh, no doubt.
We've got a lot of momentum we need to keep up yet.
I agree. Yeah, I agree completely. It's certainly not like a rest on your laurels type of thing, because that's what a lot of Democrats did during the election. They thought, well, Hillary's got this in the bag, and
a lot of individual Democrats also just well, Obama got elected, so I don't have to focus on politics, and that's the problem. It's it's not that we have a problem of too much politics. There's always a problem of not enough politics, and so we gotta keep on that as well.
And you're also talking about social inertia.
The idea, and because we have the way our brains work, we crave closure. And we get this feeling that after an election, especially after we win an election, or we get an important piece of legislation passed that we've been working on, we like to think, oh, well, it's over. We're done now.
And we're not.
And we're never done. We're never done.
That's right.
Yeah, well, that's the point that you made in that piece that you did about a month ago, or a little more than a month ago, about it's never over.
Yeah.
There's that quote that Tim Gill that I posted on there. He was one of the guys behind Obergefell versus Hodges, and he said, "I don't see any point where this is ever over with."
Right. No. Well, and that's the reason why I got annoyed at a bunch of people, in the last 2 election cycles, where it's kind of like, well, I voted for X and things aren't happening. I'm like, well, have you contacted them on various issues to show how important those issues are to you? Threaten them with primarying out if they don't do what you said, because basically, basically the people there, all of them to some degree are craven. They want to keep their job, and they're going to do based on what they think public sentiment is telling them. So, some of them were naked about it, but that's what they're all doing ultimately. Yeah. So, because again, you don't keep your job if you don't keep the right number of people happy. So, and the right people happy. So, if you show that you're constantly, and that's what the Tea Party did, and that's why I'm so frustrated with our side of the fence, because I look at I do give a lot of crap to millennials, but I will say one thing that I thought was the best thing millennials ever did was Occupy Wall Street. It was unfortunate that it didn't turn into Occupy Congress. It didn't turn into real political action. It was and then it fizzled out. But that was a step that was needed. And I'm like, it could have been the Tea Party of the left, but with not quite so batshit. Right. But it didn't go that way, and I'm hoping because I tell you what, I don't want a Democratic wave. For a while, I was saying Democratic tsunami. I want a Democratic deluge, like biblical deluge.
Yes, I want Republicans to be building an ark.
Exactly.
God damn it!
In Kansas.
That's what we need.
Well, actually, that ark works great because if they build it the way they're supposed to build it, it'll sink.
Perfect.
Anybody remember the Wyoming boys and girls? What happened to the Wyoming?
That's wonderful. That's a perfect note. That's a perfect note to wrap up on. I love that. So yeah, we've crossed the hour mark, so I'm going to wrap this up. But thanks as always to all of you for joining me.
I'm gonna be in another hangout later today, in about 4 hours from now. Blissful Melancholy is it had her birthday on Friday the 23rd, if I believe. And so she put it out on Twitter. Whoever wants to come onto her channel to play I Never Have and get tipsy. Her DMs was open, and so whoever DM'd her gets to be invited, and I was invited on. So at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, be on Blissful Melancholy's channel to be drunk at least.
There you go.
And so the birthday.
Blissful Melancholy, my arch nemesis.
No, she's arch nemesis.
Get rid of some of your shyness there.
I thought your arch nemesis was all of atheist YouTube.
That's true. Well, that's true. But all of atheist YouTube and Blissful Melancholy. She's more formidable than all of them put together. But yeah, so thanks as always for watching, everybody. And if this looked like fun to you and you enjoy what I do on YouTube, you can be a part of this. This is just one of the little things that we do for fun as part of my Patreon campaign. You can go to
birthday, Christy Winters, as well.
Oh yes, happy birthday, Chris. Everybody's happy birthday, Bliss. Happy birthday, Christy.
And Lito.
Happy birthday. She is her birthday. And happy belated Twin Peaks Day, because that was yesterday. February 24th, 11:30 a.m. I'm entering the town of Twin Peaks. Anyway, yeah, patreon.com/Steve Shives. Thank you all for your support. Thanks all of you here for joining me and for being patrons and for being awesome. And we'll do this again next month. So see you later, everybody.